Goeienaand en baie welkom by hierdie uitgawe van Fokus. Ek is Lenet Francis. Ons wyk vanaand van die geadverteerde program af. Ons sou vanaand aandag gee aan die implementering van die langverwagte kleinskaalse vissersbeleid, maar dit sal ongelukkig moet oorstaan tot 'n volgende keer. Ons fokus vanaand eerder op die verwoestende brande wat die Kaapse Skiereiland die afgelope week getuister het en die rol wat die gemeenskap gespeel het om dit onder beheer te bring. En later in die program kyk ons na die sogenaamde selfie-generasie, die ontwikkeling daarvan op sosiale media en die uitwerking daarvan. Groot dele van die Wes-Kaap is die afgelope week deur verwoestende veldbrande verskroei. Landelike gebiede in die Oeverbergstreek het deurgeloop, maar dit was veral die bergbrande in die Kaapse Skiereiland wat die land aan die praat gehad het. Miljoene rande se skade is aangerig en selfs die gewilde Cape Argus fietstoer wat vandag plaasgevind het, moes verkort word weens die brand. Dani Jeffers het hierdie verslag saamgestel.
In die warm en winderige somermaande is honderde wydverspreide veld- en bosbrande feitelik so eie aan die Kaap as die ikoniese Tafelberg en sy unieke fynbos. Maar die afgelope week het Kaapenaars in verskeie dele van die stad behoorlik gesteier onder een van die mees vernietigende en wydverspreide bergbrande in jare. En as die vlamme uiteindelik geblus is dit wat agterbly 'n grys maanlandskap waar alle fynbos verwoes is.
This fire we can compare to the 2005-2006 extensive mountain fire that we had, as well as to the 2000 fire, which was, I think, the largest out of the three, but this one is definitely one of the larger ones.
This is the second big fire we had. The one in 2000, about 2000, 1999-2000, was actually a more concentrated fire. It was probably scarier, but this one is much more widespread and I think is going to do far more damage to the Cape.
Die brand het verlede Sondag in die berge bokant Muizenberg in die suidelike Skiereiland uitgebreek. Aangedryf deur sterk wind het dit egter vinnig na omliggende woonbuurte soos Noordhoek, Kalkbaai, Vishoek, Houtbaai, Clow Valley, Tokai, Swaanswyk en Constantia versprei.
We've estimated there's about 5,000 hectares, 4,5 to 5,000 hectares that has been damaged. Obviously a proper assessment will be done once the fire has been extinguished, and then they will determine what types of vegetation has been affected and then also the quantities and how the rehabilitation is going to have to be done. We have had 14 structures that have been affected by the fire. Of that, we had 3 houses on the one day that were totally destroyed. And then on the previous day, we had 5 houses. 3 of them were thatch roof houses, and they sustained considerable damage.
En geskokte inwoners en huiseienaars moes magteloos toekyk hoe vlamme, aangevuur deur 'n sterk wind, alles in sy pad verwoes.
We started dousing the forest as much as we could, but there was no wind at the time, so we thought we were okay. And we took a break at about 12, but my sister and husband were watching the fire, and just after 1 they came and said, "Wake up, we got a problem." The wind had picked up, and this wall of fire was just approaching us over here. And we tried to go out and fight, but then afterwards we decided we couldn't do it anymore. And we grabbed what we could, ID documents, a couple of computers, and we left.
En sommige huiseienaars het alles verloor. En vir die gelukkiges het hulp betyds opgedaag, terwyl ander kon red wat daar te redde was.
We were very fortunate. No damage to the house, thanks to the fire brigade, who have been phenomenal. But the tree behind me and the perimeters of our property were damaged by the flames, which was an indication of how close it was. But 2 houses up from me, other people have lost their houses entirely.
When I came home, my wife was pretty panicky. The fire was above the house.
It was a very close call, you know what I mean? You get quite a fright when you see these flames coming down the mountain at you.
Honderde lede van die stad se brand- en reddingsdienste, bygestaan deur wetstoepassers, vrywilligers en organisasies soos Werk met Vuur, het vir dae gespook om verterende vlamme onder beheer te kry. Dit het egter telkens weer elders opgevlam en uitgeputte maar toegewyde brandbestryders moes behoorlik bond staan.
Most of the fire was running on the top slopes of the mountain, inaccessible to ground crews, inaccessible to our firefighting vehicles. And the problem that we have is if we can't get to the fire, then the fire is going to keep running until it is stopped in one form or the other.
6 helikopters het die brand vanuit die lug beveg met onophoudelike waterbomme wat op die vlamme gestort is.
A lot of the cost is going towards the helicopter costs for their flying time, and this is it's costly. Whilst they are very, very effective, we think that that cost is really justified.
In die tweede deel van ons spesiale verslag oor die Weskaapse brande wat net hierna in die beurt kom, staan die gemeenskap saam om die uitgeputte brandbestryders by te staan. En 'n klimaatkenner waarsku dat dit dalk net die begin van veel erger brande kan wees. Ons is nou terug. Ek kyk na Fokus op SABC 3. Groot dele van die Weskaap is die afgelope week deur verwoestende veldbrande verskroei. Brandbestryders is deur politici en inwoners geloof vir hulle toewyding, maar die inwoners het self 'n reuse rol gespeel om groter verliese te voorkom en die uitgeputte brandbestryders by te staan. Hier is die tweede deel van ons spesiale verslag.
Die afgelope week se brande het sowat 6000 hektaar fynbos verwoes en dosyne velddiere het ook in die slag gebly. Fokus het die groepie vrywilligers in die afgebrande veld langs Boysrylaan bokant Meisenberg raakgeloop waar hulle besig was om kos en water uit te sit vir diere wat moontlik die vlamme oorleef het.
I'm volunteer with TIR's Animal Rescue Organisation, and we decided to come up here to try and look for tortoises or any other animal we could find and take food for them, and anything that we find alive we're taking out.
And have you taken or found anything?
At the moment we've only found one tortoise that is alive, and that's already gone to a collection point where the SPCA will pick it up.
But this is quite a devastating fire.
It's very devastating. Last night this was badly on fire. It really was, and there's still an awful lot of hot spots. You know, we go in, but you have to be careful, you have to watch it because there's hot spots and so you just have to be careful.
Baie erge diere, so hulle soek nou eintlik skuilings nou, hulle het die kos nie, hulle het die water nie. So ons het maar nou die goed vir hulle nou neer nou hierso nou. En ja, so moet af nou kyk wat gebeur.
Most of the animals are adapted to fire, and you do get animals that don't escape the fire, but then they do provide food for other animals. So, you know, it is a natural and ecological cycle. I mean, for example, tortoises, sometimes they do burn out, but then their eggs actually are stimulated to hatch after a fire. So it's a whole natural cycle. Where we do have problems with you have alien vegetation. It provides a much hotter fuel, so that animals are more likely to get burned, and also tree stumps and that, you know, of big pines and, you know, burn far longer and you have a different fire dynamic. So that is a problem. So it obviously does affect the animals sort of around the urban edge. And of course it has affected the baboons.
Kommer het ook bestaan oor die Skiereiland se bobbejaantroppe wat voor die vlamme moes vlug.
Most of the troop are actually fine, but we have had a female who was very injured, and we have put her down. We've had 4 females that got slightly stinged, but they seem to be fine, so we're just monitoring that. And then we have 2 juveniles that are very, very affected, and we are trying to get to them, but it is a concern with their moms. So we're just monitoring the situation, and obviously we're trying to monitor, you know, trying to get exact figures and numbers. So the vet is out with them, UCT's Baboon Research Unit is also out, and the SPCA. And of course HWS, Human Wildlife Solutions, that are our service provider managing the baboons.
En vir die brandbestryders was daar welkome lafenis.
I've been watching the helicopters from my home, and I've just been in total awe of what they're doing, and I've just felt so helpless. So there's a whole bunch of people at Silvertree who've rallied together and sort of got a whole lot of things, and I've just volunteered to bring it down. It's the least we can do, really.
Honderde kospakkies, drinkwater, koeldranke en lekkernye is by verskeie noodinsamelingspunte deur bekommerde inwoners en sakeondernemings afgelewer.
We're really grateful to the firefighters for working on the fires so hard. We were having a fun night at Western Province Preparatory School on Friday, and we were baking, so we baked extra for the firefighters.
How this all started was a simple volunteer coffee morning that started in the Arboretum on Tuesday morning with a group of girls. We started serving coffee. The next minute the word was out that the fire guys were all up there and needing refreshments, and this is what ended up. We had a convergence of community pouring their hearts out to us, and everybody just donated. We've now got another stop at the Takai Community Church as a drop point, and they refresh us and we get it out up onto the line.
Dankbare inwoners was vol lof vir die toewyding van die honderde brandbestryders.
I had 15 people that I hardly knew suddenly appearing on my doorstep armed with hoses and spades, all willing to help. And I mean, some of my colleagues were responsible for preventing a really terrible fire that went into the roof of the property next door.
I was amazed by the professionalism of those firefighters. They knew exactly what to do. They had good kit. And I said to one of the firefighters, I said, you know, Cape Town has got the slogan, the city works for you. And the city was working for the people last night.
I am totally and utterly speechless. It's left me very emotional. It's left me very blown away and confident about our society and the community that's stuck together.
We don't know how heroic the people are who stand up in disasters until a disaster happens. And in this one, I have been awestruck by the caliber of people who are prepared to work shift after shift after shift, some 48 hours without stopping, to try and contain what has been the worst fire in decades.
'n Nuwe temperatuurrekord is die afgelope week in die stad aangeteken toe die kook bokant 40 grade Celsius gestyg het. Aangeblaas deur stormsterk wind was die tafel gedek vir 'n ramp.
A number of places in the Western Cape set high temperature records, possibly the highest on record. And our records only go back about 100 years, for many sites only about 50 years. But the Cape Point record, for example, was exceeded by well more than a degree. That's an exceptionally large excess over the previous record. There's very little doubt that the chances of getting conditions like this are increasing year by year. So what's happening is that the chances of setting low temperature records is going down, and the chances of setting higher temperature records is going up. And you can see that in the data. So every year we set fewer and fewer low temperature records and more high temperature records. So and that is clearly a sign of increasing temperatures, partly driven by global warming. Yes, there's a rule of thumb which is called informally 30-30-30 conditions, where temperatures are above 30 degrees, where the wind speed goes above 30 kilometers an hour, and where the humidity drops below 30%. Under those sorts of conditions, you can in fact get very extreme, very hot fires, very, very difficult to fight. So those are sorts of extremely high risk fire conditions. The fires that we had over the last few days, it's no comfort to people who lost their property, and some people did lose their property. But in some ways we dodged a bullet over the last few days, because the wind backed off at some time, we got a bit of rain. It could have been a lot worse. If the wind had been a lot higher, it could have been a lot worse, believe me.
Hoewel die gevolge van die afgelope week se brand vir etlike maande gesien en gevoel gaan word, is daar egter 'n welkome silwerrandjie vir die donker Kaapse wolk.
Obviously it has been quite large. Probably didn't burn as much as the last large fire we had, which was in 2000. But Fynbos needs to burn, and it's 15 years, and so it's ecologically it's not bad. Obviously, when there's a lot of alien vegetation, that is where we get problems. And that is specifically where there are problems with animals because they're not used to, the fynbos naturally is adapted to fire. So the animals are actually adapted too. And certain ones do get burnt, but then they provide food for other animals.
Die jongste nuus is dat 'n helikoptervlieënier van die organisasie werk met 4 oorlede is toe hy 'n noodlanding by Kaappunt moes doen. Hy was Hendrik Willem Beesmare en was alleen in die helikopter. Hy was besig om kleiner brande in die omgewing te monitor. Net hierna kom die bydrae oor die selfie-generasie aan die beurt. Bly gerus ingeskakel. Ek kyk na Fokus op SABC 3 as jy pas by ons ingeskakel het, baie welkom. Dis deesdae 'n algemene verskynsel om mense te sien wat selfoonfoto's van hulle self neem of groepe mense wat probeer om in een foto in te pas. Die foto's word selfies genoem. Dis 'n nuwe woord wat reeds in die Oxford Woordeboek se digitale weergawe ingesluit is. Jolene Reid het gaan ondersoek instel na die selfie-generasie.
Of a selfie is to tell the story of what's going on in that particular moment.
You can show your family and your daughter or your son one day.
Maybe when you grow up, we'll tell them that was the thing, like taking selfies. What do you guys do now?
Selfies are largely driven by social media and smartphones. Really, it's as simple as that. We've had rapid smartphone growth and social media growth in the last couple of years in South Africa.
Die woord selfies in 2013 deur die Oxford Woordeboek as die woord van die jaar aangewys.
Selfie isn't a particularly new word. We found evidence for it as far back as 2002 in an Australian forum, and there might be even earlier uses. But it's only in the last year that, after a few years of being increasingly popular in social media websites, it's become a really mainstream word in the last year, appearing in all sorts of mainstream newspapers and media sources, usually with reference to celebrities taking selfies of themselves.
Social media does have a tendency to make people more ego-centered, more narcissistic, and it's one of the dangers that people need to be aware of. Selfies in particular mean that you want to be a part of everything. You want to have your face in every photo, you want to share that with the world, and you also want to get validation. You want people to like and comment and share the photos with you in it. It gives people a great feeling, but at the same time, where's the line drawn between being a narcissist and just sharing great content with your friends? It's a very thin line, I think.
Die selfie-era word deur jonk en oud aangedryf.
If you're going to a party and there's lots of opportunities to take selfies, it's acceptable to take 10, but when you're chilling at home and doing homework, 10 selfies is just not appropriate.
2 is enough. I think 2 is enough, especially if you're pretty. You don't have to struggle for a selfie.
I do have some pictures taken by other people, like fun pictures with all my family, and then be like, oh, okay. And my friends, but mostly the selfies.
Yes.
And then you have a photo mama.
They always take pictures, but I always photo on their selfies.
Why?
Why do you always do that?
Because it's fun.
It's very narcissistic and it's going to be unhealthy, and it leads to a lot of inauthentic, false relationships. It's quite fraudulent. And then on the other hand, I think that it can be quite normal, that people have been taking selfies in one way or another for hundreds or thousands of years in terms of self-representation, self-portraits, that type of thing. And that it can be healthy, it can lead to self-awareness, it can boost your self-esteem. It doesn't have to be, entirely selfish. There can be groupies, it can be around community, it can be around reaching out to other people, connectivity over social media. So it doesn't have to be a bad thing, and it's not necessarily going to give you narcissism or some other kind of body dysmorphic disorder or personality disorder.
Wat is die vereistes vir 'n goeie selfie?
Obviously, you need to look good. Make sure you have your makeup on, your lipstick, your hair is proper, and you're just pretty.
But there's what we call no filter, no makeup kind of selfies, where you can see that she prepared to take the selfie, Let me see, she just woke up. She doesn't have makeup, but like,
Oh, I woke
yeah.
up like the selfie.
I woke up like the
Yeah.
selfie late post.
There was a time I was taking a selfie, right? I'm just gonna use this. And I was taking it from above, you know, you can see my whole body language has changed, you know? And he's like, okay, I understand this whole selfie thing is cool, right? Then he asked me, why do you have to change your whole posture now just because you take your whole face? And I was like, I don't know why. It's just I guess it goes with it all. It just completes it.
Likes are very important and comments are very important. Like, you want people to say, is this good? Is this bad? You just want to keep people talking.
I think it's okay for parents to monitor the social media usage of their children and to see what's being posted, to educate their children on boundaries, to educate their children around if you post something on the internet, it is no longer your property. It's in the public domain and that could be around forever to haunt you. So be very mindful of what you post in terms of pictures, in terms of text, to not pose provocatively.
Van die selfie konings en koninginne bestee baie tyd daaraan om hul foto's te redigeer voordat hulle dit op sosiale netwerke soos Instagram, Facebook en Twitter plaas.
People overdo it when they take selfies and then they put more filter and she doesn't look like her selfie in real life.
I'm not that light in complexion, but you get other people darker than me, then when you see them taking selfies on social media, they've already edited them like completely. They look yellow bone.
Valencia, I believe, is the top filter used in South Africa, also X Pro. But the interesting trend we're seeing now is that the use of filters is actually dropping in South Africa over the last 12 months. So people are now actually saying, you know what, the filters have been cool, but it's more of a fad. We still want to take photos and post them, but they don't have to be all filtered.
I think it's important that people have a realistic view of themselves. It's important for us to know that we can look better with a certain light and certain makeup and clothes and all the right things, but also to know who we really are in a grounded manner. You know, I think what's helpful with celebrities posting so many selfies every single day is that they don't always look great. You know, lately there have been those pictures of Beyonce that have come to light and, you know, so she has a few pimples. And then it raised quite controversy over should those pictures be out in the public domain or, you know, is it okay, isn't it okay? But I think people are starting to know that often things are photoshopped and that celebrities are also regular people with blemishes, with pimples, with double chins.
Ons het hulle gevra watter tipe selfies onvanpas is.
Usually people, when they're taking selfies in the bathroom and then you can just see the toilet seat, it's just like, no, it's not.
Like no pixie make couples, yo.
Oh, not
no
pic mix. Yeah,
no
not pic mix.
No, you do not want to see that situation. No.
Yeah, just you see like how we're standing? This is a nice picture, type of thing. Not me alone, you alone, and then we try to pic mix that. That looks so wrong.
Funeral selfie?
No, that's just inappropriate. No. We respect the dead.
Die bekendstelling van die selfie stok is deur die selfie konings en koninginne verwelkom.
This is the best little gadget ever. And at first I was like, oh my god, this thing is so corny. Like, I will not be walking around anywhere with this. Let me tell you something. This thing is the best investment ever. And even though I was using it the other day and people were staring at me, they wanted one too, I guarantee.
Nuwensgewende organisasies en adverteerders gebruik selfies vir bewusmaking en advertensieveldtogte.
One of the famous Hollywood actresses posted a picture of herself with no makeup on at some award ceremony, and she was doing it in support of one of her friends that was battling cancer. This went viral, and then all of a sudden we started getting requests and people sending us their photos of themselves with no makeup and doing it. And people were doing it because they were doing it for somebody who's either battling with cancer, who's living with cancer at the moment, or in memory of somebody who's passed away. So they wanted to show solidarity, they wanted to show support. Some Mrs. SA finalists, who are generally always well groomed, always have their makeup done so well, they were showing us photos of themselves with no makeup at all, which is very, very brave. It was their way of showing support to others. We even had men, and men were twisting it around. Men were putting on makeup and then sending us their photos. So we had some wonderful variations of the no makeup selfie campaign.
Meneer Ransky sê mense se obsessie of fascinasies met selfies sal wel afneem.
Globally, I think the trend is slowly merging towards video. as opposed to just image-related selfies. So for example, Twitter has bought Vine, which is a video company where you can take a video, maximum length of 6 seconds, and upload it, and people get very, very creative with this sort of thing, especially when a limit is placed like 6 seconds. It forces you to do the most creative work you can within the maximum time.
But first, let me take a selfie.
Ons was in die versoeking om self selfie in die einde van die program te plaas, maar ons is net te veel en die egos is net nie genoeg plek daarvoor nie. Maar daarmee dan die einde van vanaand se program. Ons verwelkom kykers se kommentaar, tweets, selfies en voorstelle. Skryf net die woord Fokus, gevolg deur 'n kort boodskap en SMS dit na 34444. 'n SMS kos R2. Word gerus ook 'n lid van ons Fokus groep op Facebook en volg ons ook op Twitter by Fokus ZA. Van my, Lenet Francis en die res van die Fokusspan, tot ziens tot volgende Sondag aand om 7 uur, weer hier op SABC 3.